tinkerer. He was an inventor, loyal. Josh was very motivated. He was a very honest person.
The thing that he did better than anyone else was he turned idea into action, and that action produced energy, and that energy connected things and it connected people. And I think that's one thing that no one will ever lose, is that sense of connection that we all got from Josh and that we have to each other because of Josh.
He's the kind of person that people wanted to be around because he was always nice, he was always positive, and he was all about a good time. And you can't identify with that, you know?
He brought the best out in people.
Not only could he do anything that he put his mind to, he would go out and do it.
Most people think or talk or say or wish. Josh did.
His work ethic was something that, you know, from a young age, I'd always admired.
He would put an idea into action immediately. He wanted a Bronco 2, he got it. He wanted the best tailgating RV, he built it. He wanted a motorcycle, he built a chopper. He wanted a coffee table that bumped like no other in freshman year of college. He went out and bought a 17-inch subwoofer and turned it into a coffee table. Not to mention the electric locks from the door and turned it into a keyless entry to his fraternity dorm room.
He would get these ideas in his head like anybody does, like, oh, this would be really cool if I did this. But he was one person that I know that would just consistently follow through with it. We had this idea to build a boombox out of a cooler. And we just were kind of bouncing ideas off at lunch one day or something like, oh man, we'll get this big battery and we'll get these speakers. It'll be awesome. We can take it anywhere. We can take it to the lake. We can take it float trips. And he just showed up one day with like all the parts. He's like, we're doing this. I'm like, okay. When we turned it on, it was like really loud. It was like met all of our expectations, and he just like lit up like, oh, look at my creation. It's alive. Not only could he do anything, he was just like, he would pull the trigger and he would do it. Starting caliber is another example. It's one thing to say, hey man, we should go into business and do this and start this. We could do it. It would be awesome. But he did it. I mean, that's as admirable as it gets for me.
I've never seen anybody put their mind and effort into something to that extent. You know, but with him, it wasn't something he'd brag about. It wasn't something he'd talk about. It was just how you did things. That's how Mike and Terry approached life, and they just passed that on to all their kids. And Josh just exemplified it.
We had a relationship as friends, but he treated me as his brother. Anytime you would reach out to him, I mean, he would make time.
If you had one phone call, who are you gonna call? It's gonna be Josh.
He was always the guy that I could call, always answered his phone. Never had to leave Josh a voicemail. The guy was the most genuine friend that I think anyone could possibly have.
I just think he related to everybody and could talk to anybody and took a genuine interest in everybody.
I have a sister, I didn't have a brother, so he kind of took that role, and whenever I had anything I needed to get that type of brotherly advice, he was always there. I got my motorcycle in 2007, and the summer of 2008, he basically made a point to, you know, we're gonna get out every Sunday and you're gonna learn to ride. It was just a constant. Every Sunday I'd get a call from him and say, hey, let's go. There was just a calmness about knowing that he was there and he was making sure everything was okay. And if something happened, that, you know, that he was gonna take care of it. That was probably where our relationship went from friends and brother-in-law to really knowing each other.
Josh, I knew, was my one-stop shop that I could call no matter what it was. You know, hey, let's go see a concert. He was always down for that. Hey man, I'm having this issue at work. You know, what do you think about this? Could call him for that. Hey man, I'm having girl problems. You know, let's go get a drink. And, you know, he was always there to talk to.
If Josh met you, if Josh knew you, he was true. Yeah, I think, you know, something that's affected me, you know, is that thinking about Josh is, People that I normally give 30 seconds to, 2 minutes to conversation to say, hey, how you doing? Josh would take 5-10 minutes to really spend time with that person and talk to them. And I think that's what made him different than 99.9% of anybody else in the world.
At our shop, we have a lot of young people from various backgrounds, and I think he was genuinely interested in every one of them and what they did. And, you know, a lot of them do things that Josh never really was a part of, like hunt or something like that, but he took an interest in it and he listened, and I think he could relate to anybody.
Nobody was too good for him. He would talk to anybody and everybody and actually listen to them. Like that's the biggest thing I think that separates Josh from anybody, is that personal level, is he actually genuinely will listen to somebody's conversation when they're talking with them, no matter who they are. And that's why he has so many friends.
You know, if you call them with an issue or problem, or because your garage door was broke or whatever it was, you know, he wouldn't just say, I'll get back to you, or dude, I'm busy. He'd step away from what he was doing, you know, and he'd say, all right, tell me more. You know, tell me about the problem, tell me about the garage door, tell me about the girl, tell me about whatever it was that was on your mind. He'd show up the next day with tools and he'd fix it for you. So, you know, I think just in terms of following through as a friend, you know, he did that as good as anybody that I've known.
He was so thoughtful. You know, as you grow and life moves and you know, things change and distance changes, there's a sense of consistency with your friends that you sometimes take for granted. Josh never took it for granted. He never did. He was there. He was always there for people, regardless of what it was. Something that might have seemed inconsequential for someone else. Come over and help me hang a TV. It's my mom's birthday party. You know my mom, but you don't have to come to it. He'd show up. You know, it was that thoughtfulness and just that you knew you would see him. You knew you could count on him.
I think a lot of people in the world throw out the term friend way too loosely, and I don't think that would be the case of anybody that Josh considered his friend, and certainly myself considering Josh a friend.
He didn't make judgments.
He had more best friends than anyone I've ever met in my life.
His level and ability to be able to connect with so many people was amazing.
He had so many friends and so many best friends that, you know, people wanted him around. People wanted him to be a part of their experience. People wanted him to be a part of their lives. It spoke volumes to his character and the kind of person he was and how many people he touched.
He accepted everybody for who they were, and he just had such a likable personality, and he just wanted to have fun.
Any friend I had that I introduced him to, like, he could jump into a conversation so quick with a person, and he could talk music with this person. You know, he was up on local sports, so he could chat sports with this one. I mean, the guy was just like very easy to talk to, very easy to make friends with. You know, any group you put him in, he was right at home.
Anybody he met, there was probably something that he had in common with them, that he could find a common ground in a conversation and become lifelong friends with them over something.
You know, the fraternity is kind of a weird place, and there's a lot of irony in it. You get these kind of beautiful pieces of pledge material that you're expected to learn and memorize, but at the same time, you know, it's going on within the haze of pledgeship. But there's one piece that I still remember 15 years later, and that's because I literally think of Josh every time I think of this. It basically says that, you know, a man of Sigma Chi needs to possess a bunch of characteristics. A man of good character, a student of fair ability, possessed of good morals, having a deep sense of honor and personal responsibility. Most people have some of those. Well, Josh had all of those. I don't think the fraternity taught him that. Those are qualities that he had throughout, and that's why people wanted to emulate him, and that's why it made him such a good friend to people.
I also knew he had all these friends, and so I knew he had this tremendous base there, but then he also had this awesome family who were obviously tight-knit. They were together all the time. They were always at the lake. And it was extended family. They were always getting together with like extended cousins. You know, it's just impressive that they had that kind of family. But I knew his buddies and what he was doing, and there were so many. He was always going to a concert of a band I never heard of, and he'd be there bright and early the next morning. Or it was a Billikens game, it was tailgate, it was this, it was that. They're planning this trip here, going there, lake, renting this, buying that. He was always in the center of it.
I don't even know how many weddings the guy was in. I mean, if you ask somebody, you know, to stand with you at your wedding, obviously that's a huge honor. He's done it so many times.
I remember the summer of weddings. You know, you get to this point where you're like 26, 27 years old, something like that. It's every weekend of the summer you have a wedding. And I think Josh had that for like 5 straight years because he had so many friends, and Savvy Formal Wear probably owes a major debt of gratitude to Josh.
He would have weddings back to back to back to back to back weekends throughout the entire summer.
Josh was kind of like my Swiss Army knife of friends.
Josh was the handiest person I'd ever met. He could fix anything, and also I guess just he was organized. Everything he did had a structure to it.
He could just fix anything, build anything. His computer skills were out of this world, and just an unbelievably skilled person. I've never met anybody like that.
He had a very good technical mind, very good problem solver. I mean, there wasn't a lot of things that he couldn't figure out on his own. Anything mechanical, fixing things, installing things, figuring out how things work. He was always kind of on the cutting edge of tech, so if I had a question about something like that, you know, he would always be the go-to guy.
I mean, he had talents that probably to this day that I'm still not aware of. I mean, who would have known that he went and got his captain's license so he could drive a barge up and down the Missouri River if he really wanted to.
The boating license that he got, it was way above, you know, he could charter a yacht and be the captain on it, and, you know, his abilities were endless.
Josh got me into motorcycles. It's one of my favorite things to do now. Josh always came over and we worked on the motorcycle. That's one of the things I remember. Anything motorcycle related, he was always there, and he knew how to do everything. So I learned a ton from him.
First day, Kevin Deptool and I drove up to the Sigma Chi house. We walked up the fire entrance to our room, and I had this answering machine, like old answering machine with a cassette tape. Found Josh in there. I asked him for a screwdriver. I was kind of showing him the cassette, and he just looked at me, and I will never forget it. The first ever time I saw this smile. It was just a smile of, I can help this guy. You know, I tried to pry the thing out, and he said, wait a second, and he unscrewed the whole thing and took the entire thing apart and cleaned it and put it back together, and sure enough, it was good as new. And from there on, we knew that it was going to be a long-time friendship. As freshman year finished out, Josh and I decided that we were going to live together sophomore year. We had our room picked out, the room in the house that we knew, kind of in the old part of the house. We knew some of the ins and outs of it, but it was a 3-man. So we brought in our buddy from Kansas City, Mike Blake, as what Josh and I dubbed the silent partner. What we did to the room in the summer is, you know, Josh with his handyman skills, and we basically made 3 rooms out of the room. We drywalled it, we painted it, we built these sections, so each of us had our own little bungalow within that room.
I always looked up to him, you know, for a lot of reasons. Most of the time we were, you know, building go-karts, or we were building forts and doing stuff like that. So I was always involved in that, but he was always doing the real construction, or the real planning, and you know, taking the measurements and making the cuts. And I was bending nails and you know, screwing things up in the background. But you know, we're good friends, so we always did it together.
I will tell you some of the things that he was not better than most people at. Dancing, wasn't an especially good dancer, and ball sports. He was athletic, but not ball sports. Not so much of a basketball player per se, or baseball even, but you take the guy skiing, like awesome, or like to watch the guy wakeboard, obviously he was awesome. Anything having to do with the water, you know, rollerblading.
He couldn't say no to any salesperson. Somebody would call up and want an appointment to sell business consulting or do collections for us or Affleck or some kind of legal service, you name it. He was a sucker for it. I couldn't believe it. But I guess it goes back to how nice he was or how accepting he was of everybody, because he couldn't say no to anybody. I mean, over and over again this happened. It's just too funny.
I think one of the things that stands out that he did better than a lot of people is he started his own company and took on a challenge that a lot of people don't want to take on and made it a successful company.
You know, as we grew older, he found something that he wanted to do and he did it. He didn't know the brick making business. He found an opportunity, he said, I can do this, and in 4 short years, he had this growing and burgeoning business that he was so proud of.
We started Caliber Cast Stone back in late 2008, early 2009. We started talking about Caliber probably in September of 2008, and we'd have meetings every couple of weeks. Then the meetings became more frequent, and he actually stayed on at his previous job at Gundaker and moonlighted doing shop drawings and estimating and putting the facility together. Was really burning a candle at both ends, you know. I mean, he had a full-time job, but then did this stuff at night. You know, for us, it was just, it was intense for him, I know. Knowing his talent, I was begging him to leave Gundaker, and it was such a huge relief when he finally did, because the business was growing and we were getting busy. And I can vividly remember the first day he was at the shop. He was knocking out things left and right, you know, and once I realized what he was capable of and just how bright he was, I was just blown away. And I would always brag to my buddies, man, my partner is incredible. I think they all looked at me like, how are you gonna do this? It was a good partnership because of what I brought to the table and what he brought to the table. The very, very first day, I remember going home and just saying, this is gonna be great. We had some business trips that we took. That was impressive all on its own, because I could see people that didn't know him were automatically drawn to him, and he made a huge impression on these people. I mean, I'm talking about a national association that we're a part of. He really made an impact with all these folks. The first time they ever met him, they asked him to be on committees and stuff. So, well, the business is moving forward thanks to Mike and Terry Seidel. I mean, we were sitting down and Mike said, we got to keep this going. The night of the funeral, I still didn't know if I wanted to go forward. They both said to me, you've got to go forward. We've got to do this for Josh. We've got to keep this going, and if you don't, it'll all be for nothing. There's some pressure in a good way. And so I didn't know that I wanted to keep going until they said that. Mike said, well, if you're comfortable, I want to come in next week and we'll try and figure out all the processes and keep things going. Mike came in, he started digging into the computer and figuring things out. Mike said, well, how about we make this permanent? And he was really the only person that I would want. So I was thrilled that he said that. So he's been in there every day, working his butt off since. Thanks to Mike and Terry Seidel, we're continuing, and Mike's my new business partner.
What wasn't there to like about Josh? I mean, he was a good-looking guy. He had great hair.
Josh's hair, if I was to describe it, was quite amazing.
Very thick and slick back. It always laid in the same spot every time, and there was never a piece that was out of place.
The sly hair it lives in lore. I would do my best to kind of not be overly jealous of his long and flowing locks.
I think the fact that he never changed his haircut in the 20 years that I've known him that's a pretty amazing feat in itself.
He loved his hair. I know for a fact nobody knew this, but he had a book in his house on how to make surfboards. The fact that he wanted to learn how to make a surfboard, and we live in middle, Missouri.
I remember hearing that and not being surprised at all. He's probably looking at the board going, how in the world did they do this? I've got to know. So he figured it out.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Things that I know about Josh that people wouldn't, I probably shouldn't say.
I don't really have anything that's probably appropriate for this.
I have to plead the fifth on that because I think the statute of limitations still has not run out. We certainly had some good times, and we enjoyed every one of them. They were memories that we made, and we'll keep forever.
Yeah, I can't really answer that question, sorry. There's so many great stories that I've told and can be told about Josh, but one of the best ones is my bachelor party. Myself and Josh and my brother-in-law got pit passes down in Richmond, Virginia. So we're out on the grass, and they're introducing the drivers, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kyle Busch, everyone you can think of, and Carl Edwards. And up until that point, Josh had said, yeah, I kind of hung out with Carl Edwards a little bit in college. And so Josh and I go stand in the middle of pit row. And as Carl walks by, he goes, Carl, M-I-Z. Carl immediately turns around, looks back, points at the both of us and goes, Z-O-U, and then waved us down to his pit. He was literally in the middle of a Speed Week interview before the race, looks over and sees Josh, stops the interview immediately, and walks over to talk to Josh and myself. And you would have thought that they hung out every weekend and every week still together the way they talked. And after the race was over, an hour later, here comes Carl Edwards in a hat and a t-shirt and sat there in a lawn chair and drank beer with us till 2 o'clock in the morning. Just tells you what an amazing person Josh is and the effect that he has on people's lives.
Josh and I, when we worked at Gundaker, we got our company's tickets for Game 5 of the World Series in 2006. We didn't realize we were getting to go till like the day before. We didn't really have any plans. We just went downtown, showed up at the seats, and we would just watch the Cardinals win the World Series in Busch Stadium. That doesn't happen very often. So, I can't hardly even think about Cardinal baseball without thinking about that moment.
We did a triathlon together in May down at Mizzou, and I drove over to his house, and then he drove us down there. It was just him and I. We had a really deep discussion about everything, politics, religion, things that we didn't normally talk about. I just appreciated having that opportunity to, kind of get to know him on a deeper level that we'd never connected on before. The drive went by and, seemingly like that, and we talked about a lot of things, and that was really cool.
Every concert, every Billikens game, Josh and I would carpool everywhere. So every time Josh would meet at my house, before we'd always have a beer. I was usually never on time, or I was running late for a meeting. So there was Josh, though, hanging out with my 2 little daughters, hanging out with Allison. For me, that was a cool memory that we always carpooled together. That was kind of like that time too, where Josh and I got to just talk. We just got to hang out, just he and I, that one-on-one time, and it was great. It was kind of like a decompressing of your whole day. Moving forward, that's going to be the hardest thing. He won't be next to me in the car.
I took the guy on a bike ride that I host every year, 4th of July, and it's all guys who are pretty into cycling. Everybody was decked out in all their cycling gear, and he showed up in a Grateful Dead jersey. Man, he was just like the guy, I'm here, let's go ride bikes. And everybody's like, really, this guy's gonna do it? And man, he did it. We
had the opportunity to go to Lou Fest together. We rode our bikes from my house over and went to the concert, and we ended up getting to go backstage, right up on stage to watch the Killers perform. And, in the last 10 years, I can't remember having a more memorable, time with him than that.
On his birthday a couple years ago, we were went to a Billikens game. The weather was a little treacherous that evening. Went to the bar and cars started getting sleeted on, iced on, and became an advisory. Highways were shut down. And we ended up staying there, having a couple more beers, and sort of turning that midnight hour. And Josh's like, well, it's my birthday. So it was one of those roundhouse calls for some tequila shots, and just turned into one of those typical college nights when you're an adult. So after that, nobody was able to drive, obviously, because of the weather. Some of the liquor didn't help, but then we all head back to Mickey's house. And in good nature, Josh fell asleep sitting fully clothed, upright, with a beer in his hands.
It's one of my best days, one of my favorite days ever. Growing up, we spent a lot of time at the Lake of the Ozarks, and he was a really good water skier and wakeboarder and wake skater, et cetera, et cetera. When we got married down in Mexico back in 2008, he was the best man at the wedding. And the day after the wedding, we rented surfboards and stuff. And I mean, these were like monster waves, and neither of us had ever surfed before. And we were way out of our league, but we ended up, surfing for a good couple hours that day. We both caught waves, both rode them in. I mean, I'll take it to my grave as one of my best days ever.
Even though he didn't have a family of his own, he always had an opinion about the way we raised our kids, or if he said something positive about how our kids were acting, I took it very seriously. And the fact that he would say something positive about something that Lindsay and I were doing as parents, it meant a lot to me. So I'll miss those.
He's going to be missed by so many people for so many reasons, and they're all really good reasons.
I miss most just him walking through the door every day, and just having him across the hall.
As time goes on, it doesn't get any easier. It just it's the longer that you haven't had him in your life.
That's the hardest thing for me, is I'm just not going to be able to talk to him again.
What are you going to miss most? I think everything.